Welcome to the 112th episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome, and thank you for listening. Well, the book sales have been going on for a week. The doctor and the dietitian are all happy. People are getting their books. There is a deal on Amazon that if you buy the paperback, you can also get the ebook for $2.99. That allows you to take it with you wherever you go. So you always have, and the pictures turned out really nice on the ebook as well. So that's great. I'm making a plea right up front for some good 5-star reviews on Amazon so we can make our way up and get this book out to as many people as we possibly can. So far, I've had some nice reviews and nice feedback. We did a lot of extra effort to get the pictures in. Addie did a great job with the photography. And I think that makes a really big difference that you can see something that you would like to cook and you see how it turns out. And, if something looks good, you're more apt to eat it, and you can show it to your family. Would you like to have this, or would you like to try this? And so I think that really helps out. I did go on and reviews from various, cookbooks, and some people say they like it. Some people say they don't. Some people say they've seen the recipes before. Some people say they don't want to see the recipes before. But these recipes are recipes that we've had on our website from time to time or in our newsletters. If you get our monthly newsletter, that's free to anybody. We use a lot of these recipes in our nutrition class. They are family favorites, and that's really what the cookbook was designed to be. It was our family favorites, our go-to recipes, and favorites of the wellness class. So I prepared them for 25 people, and I prepared them for 4 people. It works out really well, and we have the nutrition facts there for it. And we don't add any salt and sugar or oil to these recipes, so you don't have to adjust them. There is room on the page if you want to make some, I'd like to add a little bit more of this or a little less of this, your own personal notes on the recipe. So would love for you to go pick that up at Amazon. Addie Dulaney Meinerch, my co-author, lives in Houston, Texas now. She does our nutrition consultations via the phone and Skype, and she also does our exercise, phys, and wellness program for the members. But if you would like to have a personal signing, or you'd like to set up, if you have a meetup, or you'd like to have a cooking demonstration, I'm going to volunteer her, and in Houston area, that she'd love to go and show you some of these recipes close and up front. So if you have any group, please give us a call or an email at info@drdulaney.com, or you can email Addie directly at addie@drdulaney.com, and doctor spelled out, of course. So anyway, this week in review, we always learn something every week, and we have great discussions in our nutrition classes. We have 3 nutrition classes a week. We have a couple members that have just completed a 3-day water fast for the first time. And, they've done this to kind of a jump start and really learn more about mindfulness than about trying to lose any kind of massive amounts of weight or reset that or, cure anything in 3 days. I mean, I think you do clear out your metabolic waste garage a little bit in the 3 days, but a 3-day water fast really just kind of lets you take a time out. We have people not do a whole lot, light housework, light walking. If you have a desk job, obviously, or something like that, it's okay to do, but not a lot. We don't want people to do a lot of physical work because we don't want muscle breakdown. But it's a time to kind of reflect and to read and to actually come to grip with the demons between your ears that kind of crash your nutritional choices a lot of the times. And, both the people that have really done the fast recently, one of the main things that they see is like, I really wasn't near as hungry as I thought I would be. And, you find out that a lot of what drives you to eat is boredom or just stuff in between your ears. And most people, they felt really good. And it was a nice restart for them, and they got along well. So hopefully this will kickstart their plant-based journey, and then they'll take, they have that time out now that they can, kind of assess their food choices a little bit better as opposed to, falling for the quick impulse choices when I think I might be hungry, or I think my stomach might be growling, or I just need something, or I have this, giving into. And most of them are perceived cravings. There is some link to the microbiome that, there's the bacteria, what we feed it. There may be there is a neuronal gut-brain axis that connects our brain to our gut. So when we feed our gut chicken wings and McDonald's and those kind of things, it kind of feeds back and once more, and you get these cravings that keep going on. So I think that's why people that do cheat days, so to speak, they can't really ever get past not eating good all the time, because they have these cravings and these neuronal impulses that say, hey, you want to try this again, and it just becomes a revolving door, so to speak. There's a lot about the ketogenic diet, and I've mentioned it here. It's a quick way to lose weight. Obviously, when you fast, you become ketotic, because once you've depleted your carbohydrate stores and you have about 2,000 calories of glucose in your muscles and in your liver in the form of glycogen. Once that's gone, you start breaking down fat, and you break down a little bit of protein to feed your brain, but your body starts to rely on these ketone bodies that become oxidized, and you get your short chain fatty acids. And there's a lot of claims as far as that's why in a ketogenic diet, when you're eating less than 100 grams of carbohydrate a day, that it's protective against oxidation and that your glucose don't go up. But the reality of it is, there's not a lot of good evidence out there as far as just eating a high fat diet, how that would actually protect you against oxidation, because obviously if you're eating a high-fat diet, you're oxidizing a tremendous amount. When you're fasting, you're not giving your body anything, so you're basically just using, your body is in a conservative mode, using as little calories as it can. It's breaking down fat. It's not trying to handle, a steak with butter on top. So there's a huge difference with what you present the body. In these great United States, we deal with excess all the time. And so we're always trying to find out, how can we do excessive amounts of something and still be okay? And the reality of it is that we really can't. We need to be thankful for our abundance, but also realize that there is an abundance, and that does not mean that we need to take in and store for a rainy day. It's storing excessive calories and nutrients does not. It's not the same as having money in the bank for a rainy day these days, since we never really are in a state of starvation. There was a study that's all hub this week about red and white meat that shows that both red and white meat increase LDL cholesterol versus plant proteins, and it is associated with the protein, not just the amount of saturated fat. Certainly, when you're eating meat, you can't separate the two, and we like to, as a society, to blame the protein or blame the fat. But when you eat a chicken breast, it contains saturated fat as well as protein, just like a sirloin steak contains saturated fat and protein, and both cause your LDL cholesterol to go up. Both gives you, both contain cholesterol, both contain a lot of other things that are unhealthy. And, we have these metabolic breakdowns. We have increasing acidification and these hydrogen byproducts. So, it's kind of a no-brainer that, and we talked about it in class. It's like, so, okay, when people are filling out questionnaires for cardiac rehab, they always check, I limit my red meat intake. I try to eat a lot of white meat or, a lot of chicken. And it's like, when did that come to play that's a good thing? And nobody really takes time to say, well, what's that chicken actually doing for me? We came up in class with, well, it fills you up. That was the bottom line. If you have chicken on Sunday, it fills you up. It serves a place on the table that fills people up, and you don't have to have as many vegetables at a big table because the meat will help fill people up and keep them satisfied. That's it. There's no nutrient that we get from chicken. We don't need the protein that comes from chicken. We get it from other sources just fine. Unfortunately, beans maybe don't look as good on the table, but they do just as good as far as the protein content. Plus, there's more fiber. Plus, there's no cholesterol. But it just becomes our perception that we just quit thinking about, and we look at a table, and if you look at a cartoon or a movie and a dinner table, there's always, and it's a nice family dinner, there's always a platter with meat on it. It's just because it fills it up. There's no other reason than just because. So we look for ways to justify it, that chicken's better than beef or pork's better than chicken. It's just a justification. It's, there's no need for it whatsoever. Even if the study would have come out and said, well, there's a little bit of a benefit, or there's it's not quite as bad. It's still, it's still just something that we justify in our mind because we have that visualization. We have to change what the picture is in our head. We have to change the story of your nutrition. That's, again, like the reason why we put a picture for every recipe in the cookbook is that we want your mouth to water when you see the recipe and you see that particular entree. And then you get used to looking at that table. And once you start looking at the table or the plate that contains multiple colors and multiple vegetables, then that becomes your nutritional story. It's not, the one of, I'm a junk food junkie and I like to have all this junk food around. We had a member that, again, we have a lot of people that struggle. And I think that's, we had a podcast about that where some people think that they're the only ones that struggle, and everybody does, especially early on when they're starting their plant-based journey, because you have, 1 foot how it used to be and 1 foot in where you'd like it to be. And so if somebody succumbs to the cookie or whatever, then they feel guilty, or they had, somebody reported to me they had cookies and fruit, and then they felt bad because they had the cookies, so they didn't eat any dinner. And then when they checked their glucose the next morning, their glucose was higher than they wanted to be. And it's like, how could that be? I didn't have any dinner. I punished myself for having the cookie. I didn't have any dinner, yet I still didn't get the reward of a good glucose reading in the morning. And unfortunately, when you look at the mechanism of diabetes, we're looking at the fat blocking the uptake of glucose. And so when you put the fat of that cookie, it's not a carbohydrate. It is a carbohydrate in fat. And it's the fat that's actually blocking the uptake. So that cookie lasts. It's not something that is just, it came and it went, but it not only it lasts, it affects your gut microbes, it affects your immune system. And so you continue to have to pay for that for a little bit. But it's just that. It's a learning experience, and you're retraining yourself, you're retraining your gut microbes, and you're learning a new story, and you're learning to look at things differently. So that, it was great that she actually had fruit with a cookie, because in yesteryear, she would have just had the cookie or a sleeve of cookies. So, the learning, the advancement was that she's actually, adding fruit to the diet. So now you just go to the next step. You realize that there was negative feedback from the cookie, especially, a store-bought non-plant-based cookie that, has the oil in it and all the other kind of trans fats. So now you're not going to do that, and you're going to go on and learn from it and let it go and keep trying. I listened to a podcast on my run, and they were talking about the microbiome. And, again, once there's something that has some good out there, or we want to get good gut, we know that, certain bacteria are beneficial, certain bacteria in our system are harmful. And, we're really learning about this. 2006 was, the beginning of some of the first papers that are coming out. So this whole idea of the microbiome and how it influences health, disease, inflammation is all very, very new. but industry wants to take it and, run with it, of course, and we want to apply it to everything and blame it for everything. And, we have to be slow about a lot of these things. Not, a probiotic or kombucha is not necessarily good for everybody. And what are we actually looking to cure? I think, when we treat people in our office, we never, whether it's a supplement or a probiotic or a antibiotic or a medication, we're never going to give anything to anybody that we don't understand what the results are, what are we trying to treat, what are the potential benefits, what are the side effects. And to just blindly go in and take, probiotics because we want to have a diverse gut bacteria, we're not there yet. And we don't even know what a good gut bacteria is for each of us individually. Maybe, it's where you start, where you'd like to be. But they did mention that, the Amish have some of the, a diverse gut is actually, a diverse microbiome in your gut is actually very, very good. And they mentioned the Amish, have one of the most diverse gut microbiomes of any culture. They grow their own vegetables. They're outside. They eat simply. They don't live in densely populated areas. But I'll also say they're not perfect. They do have significant heart disease because they tend to eat a high-fat, high-saturated diet on occasion, and they tend to smoke. So not all Amish are perfect, just like not every other ethnic group of people are not perfect. They all have their challenges. But, the ones that are, I would guess, that eat more vegetables than meat, obviously they don't grow an excessive amount of meats. They don't do anything excessive, so that helps their gut, diversity. So it's great to look at a certain population and what do they do good, and let's emulate that population. So, getting outside. At class, this week we talked about, how many people had been outside, how many people work in a garden or have, some herbs outside their door. It's summertime everywhere now. So, I would encourage at the very least people to get a little herb garden going, so you can grow basil and oregano and thyme in plants. They make, really pretty shrub lines if you can get them really going. And it's really nice to be able to go out and gather some of your own herbs to make a dish. Makes it a lot more fun to cook if you have those, and just getting out and working in the dirt a little bit will help diversify your microbiome. It's not just what lives in our colon, but it's what lives in our skin. And being outside, exposed to the fresh air, is a great thing. And so, we spend so much time inside, and there's hand sanitizers everywhere, and the windows are closed, and the air conditioners are recirculating all of the same things in our houses, and the antimicrobial soaps and the antimicrobial detergents, and it's good to get outside and get some fresh air. And you heard Gretchen barking in the background, and we also know that people that have pets have a more diverse gut microbiome. So thank you, Gretchen and Samantha and Vincenzo, for diversifying the microbes in this house. If they just maybe there was a little less fur, sometimes it would be great. But it's well worth having the fur babies around. That's for sure. Getting back to this gut-brain axis, the microbes in our gut actually produce and help us to actually make short-chain fatty acids that can feed back into our brains. And it's estimated that 90% of the serotonin produced in our body is actually produced from the enterochromaffin cells in our GI tracts, and then it's ultimately stored in platelets, and it can cause vasoconstriction, it can cause GI motility, and of course then there's also the ability for serotonin to work as on mood in the brain. So we have gut bacteria that actually produce short-chain fatty acids that enter these enterochromaffin cells that ultimately produce serotonin. But just eating, there was an ad that came through my in-mail box that talked about, have this algae, which was basically spirulina, and you increase it's a high source of tryptophan and protein, so the protein will give you energy, and the tryptophan will go to produce serotonin, and you'll feel great at work, so you should take this stuff. Well, the reality of it is the tryptophan that you eat through spirulina doesn't go directly to produce serotonin. Like there's like a little factory that, you put it in one end and you're spitting out serotonin and everything's great. And of course, we don't get energy from protein. We get energy from carbohydrates. Spirulina is a great source of nutrients. It's used to feed cattle, and it can be grown in all kinds of animals. It can be grown just about anywhere in swampy conditions and everything. And it's a very, very cheap product that is put in little bottles and sold as a giant health promoter. But the reality of it is it isn't any better than eating a whole food plant-based diet that you can chew and get fiber from and everything else. So don't be fooled by, these needs for pick-me-ups. Now you can't check out at a grocery store that there's not 5 or 6 different energy drinks, 5 or 6 little things that'll stimulate you to feel good, pick you up. And that's just a reflection of how bad our society is getting with regards to how many people feel bad. If people didn't feel bad, they wouldn't be picking these things up. So obviously they're selling. So there's a lot of people eating the standard American diet that are so sluggish and slow and so vasoconstricted, they'll do anything to get a pick-me-up. I did my long run today, which is I'm just starting to build up again, I guess, for Ironman Chattanooga. So today was scheduled 13-mile run. I don't know what it is on Saturdays. The basketball player, the NBA basketball playoffs are on. So I stayed up a little later, got up and did some emails, so I didn't get started. Here in Florida, it's getting hot really early and very humid, so I went out. And it was so warm that I let the dogs out early when I got up, and they had enough heat by just going out in the backyard for a little bit. So when I went to run, they both looked at me and actually went to the Diva's house and didn't even want to join in. They looked at me, it's like, no, we're not going. So I was rejected and headed out to the street by myself. I realized I didn't have my heart rate monitor on. I'd like to see what my heart rate does when I'm doing my long run. So I came back in and got my heart rate monitor. I had my water bottle. I get, a couple miles down the road and realized I didn't have any gels with me. So usually I like to make a big loop. I guess I'm like a horse. I don't like to see the barn. So the longer I can stay away from having the opportunity to come back to the house, the more likely I am to be successful. So I could have made loops and came back and got a gel, but I said, maybe this will be a great day to see just how far I can run without a gel. I used to, my first marathon ever when I started training, and I actually went from running 3 miles to signing up for a marathon. And it's a long story, but it started many years ago. But I used to, and I'll never forget, because I used to run with red Gatorade. So even in the morning, my daughter was small, so I'd run a treadmill on the house. And I get up and I get a bottle of Gatorade and have on the treadmill with me. So I would start out with a sugary drink. So I was burning calories and consuming calories at the same time. And then I would take red Gatorade and chocolate goo with me on runs. And so it was a smorgasbord of, having to have some calories. Now, obviously in the beginning, when I was training for my first marathon, I was very inefficient. So I was burning glucose right and left. My heart rate was high. I used to run in a heart rate. Of course, I was younger then, but I used to run in heart rate 150s, 160s, just as an easy pace. And so, I became very dependent on calories and just like we talked about with fasting, very mentally dependent on calories. And I could feel my legs get heavy or tired when I started to run. And so I would feed them. And then I would have the instant feedback when I took a goo in that my legs would feel better. And so after about an hour, then I got to the point where And even at first, before a long run, I get up really early. So I had a bagel before I would do my long run. So, finally, as the years progressed, I don't eat anything before my long training runs. And I certainly don't have any bagel because it just would sit there like a lead piece of, just a piece of dough in the bottom of my stomach, and really didn't do anything other than make me feel bad for the first hour or so. So I get up and I don't typically eat anything. Sometimes I'll have a cup of tea if I'm going to do some work before. But for the most part, I get up and get out the door. So I decided to see how long I can go. And usually, about that 9-mile mark is when, or an hour into things, I tend to want something. So I kept going. And when I hit the 9-mile mark, I could start to feel a little bit. The worst thing is just so humid here. My heart rate was higher than it usually is. I'm also trying to breathe through my nose for my whole entire long run. So that's requiring me to slow my pace down a little bit as well. But, between the heat and I'm breathing through my nose and, the idea for that is that I'm going to deliver more oxygen to my tissues and use glucose more effectively. And I think it actually did because in the past, I think I would have felt a lot worse not taking any gels. But anyway, I made it 13 miles. I also ran out of water, probably a mile or so left. So, good training. You can do it once you, just like the water fast, once you realize that you realize that a lot of the stuff is just because you always have, and you don't necessarily need to. And it was a lot better to come home and get my fruit bowl than to just eat those sugary gels to fill myself up while I was and give myself a little energy. So I think I'll continue to try to push that a little bit. I'm certainly going to continue the nose breathing and to watch my heart rate and to hopefully see that come down. So my recovery when I got in was water, cold water with ice. And I had my fruit bowl with chia seeds. I usually take the chia seeds, put a little bit of soy milk, microwave them. They kind of become a little bit of a porridge, and then have a big bowl of fruit. It's mango season here in Florida. And that's the other thing I did on my long run. We have a house not too far away that lets us get some of their mangoes. So I stopped and found a few mangoes on the ground my last mile. So I tucked them into my fuel belt and ran with my mangoes. Looked like I was carrying hand grenades, I guess. So my fruit bowl had mango, not the ones I picked up today, they have to ripen, but mango, black cherries, papayas, and blueberries. So that was a great breakfast. And I had a piece of salt rice and toast with some fruit spread on it. And the salt rice and toast is, again, my grandmother's bread recipe. That's in the cookbook, shameless plug. But it is so great to toast it. It's, kind of crunchy on the outside, soft on the inside. And so that was my reward for my 13-mile run. We did a new recipe in class on Friday with millet. And if you haven't tried millet, it's a great whole grain that's gluten-free and very high in protein, very high in fiber. So we did the millet in the Instant Pot, and then we did a combination of onions, peppers, garlic, broccoli, white beans, and peas. And did that and served that with the millet. We used herbs that were from my garden, so we did some fresh lemon, thyme, and basil, and oregano. So that was what we used to flavor that, along with a hot Thai chili pepper. So that turned out really good, and made a sauce just as a garnish using parsley and silken tofu and a little garlic. And so that turned out good. The only thing that we would, and it was a recipe I'd never done before. I saw millet in a photograph somewhere along the line and decided to add things together. So that's kind of how we come up with some of the recipes. We see things and put them together and switch them around a little bit. So that, was a really nutrient-dense, plant-strong little lunch. We had broccoli, nitric oxide producing broccoli, and all our basil and parsley, nitric oxide producing. We had a lot of protein from the grain. as well as the peas and the white beans. Not that need to be worried about protein deficiency, but everybody needs to see it. And, we had the antioxidants with the yellow and the red peppers and the onions. So it was a really good Plant Strong meal, and everybody enjoyed it. And again, if you're looking for gut diversity, gut microbe diversity, you want to try to eat as many different vegetables and fruits as you can. Sometimes we get into a rut with things we really like, but try to mix it up and see if you can, and maybe even keep track and write it down how many different vegetables and fruit that you eat in a week. I always know when somebody comes into the office early on and they talk about string beans and corn that they're not really diverse in their vegetable choices. So try to up the vegetable choices for the week, and see if you can get to 30 different vegetables and fruits for the week. It is, again, like I said, mango season and papaya season. We have a papaya tree out front or outside of our in the yard, and so it's nice to be able to get local fruit as well. But try some new fruits. This is the time of year that a lot of tropical fruits are available. Certainly, all kinds of melons are available. A lot of vegetables are in season and farmers market stands. If you live in the Georgia area, peaches are coming into season. So make sure you really diversify and eat the fruits that are in season, and eat different variety of vegetables. Try them different ways. So if I look at the successes for the week, I'm going to start latest to earliest. I'll say that the long run this morning without any gels was a success for me. In Deert, it started out as maybe going to be a bad run. It could have went either way, but turned out that I was very happy that I completed the 13-mile run, so I wasn't too bothered by having to do it slow. I'm all showered up and cleaned up now, so I feel pretty good, ready to go on and take on the day. Certainly very thankful for all of you that have purchased the book this week. It's been great. We've had great feedback, and I was worried at first how it was going to actually look when you got it in your hand. It's been such a long process, so I'm very grateful to all of you that have purchased a book, and certainly those of you that have left reviews as well. Taking time out to do that has been very nice. In the office, so my mom and I got to autograph a few for the nutrition class people. It's nice to have people that like us to say something on their cookbook. So if you're in town, Port Charlotte area, and you want to stop by and get your cookbook autographed, we'd be happy to. Like I said, Addie's in Houston, so if you're in that area and you want an autographed book by her, that would be great. Also, as far as the practice go, our successes, I think the water fast was successful for a couple of people that have done that in the last week or so, just as a reset to their mindfulness. We also had people, we have a lot of people working on their breath and their breathing to try to become more CO2 tolerant, to actually focus on breathing from their diaphragm as opposed to taking short, shallow breaths. Using them as a calming a technique to get kind of back off of this sympathetic tone world that we live in, back to a more parasympathetic, more anti-inflammatory, lower heart rate, lower blood pressure. And we're having some success with several people bringing their blood pressures down through breath work. Also, it's amazing when people change their diet and they have that first aha moment when all of a sudden their joints don't hurt, because nobody really. It's one thing to associate plant-based nutrition with lowering your blood pressure, or less salt and your ankles don't swell, or less indigestion with oil. But it's really hard to believe that what you eat causes your joints to hurt. And, when people have looked at bones, there's a lot of inflammation, even if it's osteoarthritis, just because a doctor says you're bone on bone. The x-ray doesn't tell the story. It's the inflammation that tells the story. And so by taking the inflammation out of your diet, your body can actually heal itself. And maybe your bones aren't as perfectly straight as they were when you were 7 years old, but they don't have to hurt just because the picture's not perfect. And the hurt and the pain actually comes from the inflammation that is in the bone and in the joints. And so by changing your diet, getting the oils out, getting the dairy out, getting the animal products out, eating more fresh fruits and vegetable, color, variety, it's amazing how quick joint pain goes away and bone pain goes away. So we had some successes this week when, the aha moment, all of a sudden people can walk up a flight of steps without their joints hurting. They're not having pain at rest. Their mobility is better. And of course, when you're not in pain from the get-go, it's a lot easier to start to move and to start doing something. If you're in pain at at rest, it's hard to believe that moving is going to actually help. So that was a great success this week. And we continue to have success in our yoga class, that people are getting more mobile, getting up and down off the floor. And it's a great addition to the membership practice. So it's a great week all in all. I look forward to next week as I do. I have the best job in the world to be able to do something I love, mold endurance activities and wellness and science and nutrition and cooking and the practice of medicine all together. It's been a game changer for me. So look forward to speaking with you next week. If you haven't went out and got that book, grab that book off of Amazon and let me know what you think. I love a good review. If you have any questions, email me at jami@drdelaney.com. It's JAMI@drdelaney.com. I'd love to hear from you. Check out our website, drdelaney.com. I put up a blog post every week. Addie Dulaney Miners is going to start adding a blog post as well to that. Check out her website as well, naturallyrootednutrition.com. And keep in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great week.